Godzilla x Kong was a movie that came out last year and is, well, mixed amongst the fans. A lot of debate started up from that film. One of those debates being, did Kong knock out Godzilla in the Egypt fight, with this clip right here. So, I might as well give my intake on this debate, since this debate is sparking back up about a year later. It has been sparking back up due to something I'll mention a little later in the video a bit ago, but it's been sparking back up here, so I might as well give my take on it. With both sides throwing around misconceptions and not really getting their point across, let's give my point of view on this. Before we go into the arguments themselves, let's go over the context of the fight. Kong had just gotten his new Beast Glove, which enhances his combat ability, seemingly ruining him up as well, considering the drugs introduced to his system. With Kong then wanting to go to the surface to ask Godzilla for help for the looming threat of Shimo and Scar King, a threat neither could take down on their own. Though the humans admit that even though they don't know about Godzilla's evolution, which gave it a buff of 2 times on all of the stats, giving him 20 times more radiation he could intake into himself, making his skin more durable, so on and so forth, with them only knowing about the supercharged form he took in France, that Kong would likely get simply beaten to death, and that it was a suicide mission for Kong, but he didn't care. But as the humans suspect, Godzilla misunderstands Kong's cry for help and goes straight in for Kong, with Kong not trying to fight at first, being confirmed to play dirty and use the environment to his advantage.
Yeah, well, I like that Kong can fight a little dirty. I think it's always really cool in movies where characters utilize their setting to give them some sort of, even if it's a brief advantage.
And this just enrages Godzilla.
Against the enraged Godzilla, Kong staying on the defensive until Godzilla gets a suplex in on Kong, which enrages Kong, giving him the sense of rage that he hasn't felt since GVK, and actually comparing it to GVK.
I remember Adam living. Well, this is his revenge for GVK. You know, he's trying to get Godzilla to just do something, but right here he kind of lost his temper, and so he got a little carried away. The thing
which then Kong goes into a full enraged mode, unleashing a combo on the Big G, which the final hit, which is what is discussed about in this video, with Kong then dragging Godzilla back. Godzilla gets up, shoots a breath. Kong dodges it, knowing he would simply get eviscerated if he tries to take it head on. Kong then tries but fails to react to the Big G, who pins him down. Kong would only not immediately die from the stomps due to the sand cushioning his blows.
Well, and see, like, in the last film, Godzilla won from crushing Kong down. That's sort of his, like, finisher move. But, Kong got lucky here because the ground in Egypt gives way and it's, like, sandy. And so the stomping isn't enough to crush him to death. So that's the reason why that move isn't as effective here as it was in the last movie.
With Goji about to unleash the atomic breath before Mothra knocks him back. Then the two team up and the rest of the movie happens. So after we got the context cleared up, it was clear both parties not only got lucky, but weren't mentally at their best. Kong was forced to play dirty, use the environment, and with the environment wasn't there, it's confirmed he would have just died from Godzilla on several occasions. With Godzilla, which Godzilla himself being an enraged state, clearly not thinking and fighting strategically. Kong clearly showing he could take advantage of this when he himself got enraged, which is why Kong, for example, was able to knock down Goji, with Kong using Godzilla's own momentum against him, for example, and why Godzilla couldn't really do anything after that point. Though, as we just discussed, the fight makes it extremely clear, and the outside context of the fight, even a energized Godzilla versus a Beast Club Kong is still a huge stomp in Godzilla's favor in any fair fight, more or less evolved. Either way, ultimately the verdict of this doesn't really change anything in terms of power scaling, or Kong's ranking in the MonsterVerse. Kong, while he did well, is still obviously massively below the Big G in terms of power, even if you take the knockout. As once again, it is just stated, not only is weaker Godzillas who are like less than 2 times weaker, or more than 2 times weaker, most likely, could beat Kong to death. We know this Godzilla can just one-shot Kong if the environment wasn't in Kong's favor and Kong just didn't play nerdy. So ultimately, actually, this debate in itself I don't think is that meaningful, as in either way, it doesn't change how much Kong scales to Godzilla. But let's just go right into the points, starting with what the novel has to say about this scene. Kong drove his yellow armed fist straight into Godzilla's mouth. The lizard pitched back into the dirt. Kong expected him to get right back up, but instead he laid still, not dead. So it does confirm Godzilla was still, unmoving for a moment. While Kong is thinking to himself about it, he then gets immediately to dragging him. In which this is where we go back to the film. Something to note here is nothing implied or says Kong was just standing there for a second looking at him. That's headcanon. The novel is referring to Kong's inner thoughts, not Kong literally standing there and saying this out loud or something. But what about the fact that Godzilla didn't move? The interesting thing is that's actually evidence for both sides or neither of them. Obviously, if he's unconscious, which would be the condition for him knocking out, he's not moving. But if he's stunned, by definition, he cannot react as well. Or if he's in a semi-conscious state and is not fully unconscious, he couldn't really react as well. He would just be confused and not really aware of what's going on. This is about as just as vague of a description as the film itself, not really giving us a definitive answer either, which we'll get into a little later, and just supports either side of the position, as you can interpret it either way, that, oh, he's still because he's dazed, or he's still because he's unconscious. It doesn't really matter. Next, let's go into a more recent edition, a edition that a lot of people actually forget to mention, the audio commentary from the bonuses of the GXK Blu-ray. The audio commentary just flat out says that Kong was stunned.
He roars furiously as he stuns Godzilla with his flurry of punches.
Not much to go off of here, flat out confirming he's stunned, obviously leaning more towards the stunned interpretation and that he's not knocked out. Very little else to say here. It's quite blatantly stated Kong's punches were, stunning him, and also confirming the fact that Godzilla was limply moving his arms, something that really doesn't happen if you're unconscious. Next, let's go into a more recent edition, and what actually sparked this debate up again. Goji Guy, the YouTuber's interview with the motion capture actor for Kong, who plays him in GXK and GVK, in which he says the following.
Over on the ground. Can you tell us if it's in the script, in the Egypt battle? Can you give a definitive answer if you're allowed to? Because when I was interviewing Greg, he's very, he can't really say too much because there's the mythology department. Is there a definitive answer? Did Kong knock out Godzilla, even just for a brief moment in the Egypt fight?
When he powers up the beast glove?
Yeah,
absolutely.
He did.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
He knocks him out for the briefest moment, but he does. He shuts him down.
Yeah, that's
why he has the beast glove, right?
Yeah, like one thing I always said, it's like there's no way Kong could have punched him so hard that Godzilla, within everyone's like, oh, it's a continuation of a shot. It's like, yes, called transition, where it's like, you have it transition next thing. If you want to really blunt one, like Star Wars, they have like little things like that.
But also Kong has to power up the beast glove to 100%.
Yeah.
And hit Godzilla as hard as he can, and it doesn't I don't know if it's full lights out, but he knocks out Godzilla enough that he can grab his tail and drag him along the sand. You know what I mean? He debilitates Godzilla enough that he can be like, okay, I'm gonna drag your ass into this portal. You watch any UFC fight or any boxing match, and it's not like, it's not the full whack and then they're kind of like rigid, but it's like he knocks him out and Godzilla's like, I don't know where I am, I don't know what's going on, and his body's just like, let's lie down for a minute. Kong gives it 100%. Like
what I've always said is like, because the argument's like, oh, there's no cut in the film. It's like, yeah, but that's implying that Kong. This many things happen. Kong punched him, punching down. He punched down at the ground. But you're implying somehow punching down, it rolled Godzilla over out of the sand, his dorsal plates that are deep in the sand, rolled him all the way over. Kong then got off of him, was able to catch his breath, and then grab his tail, put it on his arm, and start walking within the span of like a second. Kong's fast and he hits hard, but not that fast and hard. So yeah, that's awesome. That has been
I think he smoked him enough that he was able to get him in position to start dragging him.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, that is awesome. That is awesome. So
like in terms of how we played it when we were
very obviously this is leading to the Kong knocking out Godzilla interpretation. That's what he's saying. That's what his opinion is. That's what he seems to imply what is in the script he was given, though that's a little iffy, considering he once again states it's his opinion, and he also states it might not be a full lights out and does question if it's a full knockout here and there, but he's still saying it's a knockout. No matter what he says about Godzilla being maybe just confused or dazed, it still does lean more towards the interpretation that Kong did knock out Godzilla, so obviously this is more of a point to that. So right now we have one source saying it wasn't a knockout and one source saying it was a knockout, with another source supporting either side of the position. So what does the movie itself have to say about it? Well, nothing actually, it doesn't say anything, but let's say what the movie shows us. The movie probably has a couple second time skip and shows Godzilla's eyes being wide awake and him moving his eye as well as his arm, and it being moving when we see him next. And while obviously this isn't a objective answer, considering a knockout means you are unconscious, which is very much more commonly associated with not moving at all and having your eyes closed, it very much does seem to be leaning towards not a knockout by the film's perspective. Well, is it true that you can move your body limply and have your eyes open while being unconscious? In some situations, yes. But no one's gonna sit here and argue that's the most common thing. It's very much common for the opposite thing to occur, to where you're simply still and not moving and your eyes are closed. Especially if the movie was trying to visually show Godzilla was knocked out, then showing his eye be opened and, you know, his claw moving is like not a good visual indicator that he is knocked out. So I think if the film itself was trying to show that Kong was, knocking him out, they would not probably maybe say it or more show it visually instead of visually showing something that's more associated with the opposite side of the spectrum, that he's more stunned than anything. Obviously, that on its own is not enough to firmly say that he's not knocked out, but let's get into the overall. Overall, well, a lot of it is very vague, actually. It doesn't really give us a clear answer. The fact of the matter is, the only thing pointing to a full-on knockout is the actor's confirmed opinion, who, not only, as we mentioned, is somewhat questioning this, saying he might not have been fully lights out, or if it was a full unconscious knockout, or he just, hit him really hard and Godzilla was confused and dazed. Well, once again, it just still does lean more towards the interpretation. A single thing from the opinion of someone who doesn't hold much authority, not as much authority as, people we've talked to on other parts, on other videos I've made, such as Greg Keeves, who, writes the novels themselves, is obviously a lot more valid source than, the Kong actor in this context. With, once again, this statement being from a opinion of someone who's not really the most valid source, and then he questions himself too, compared to the audio commentary just flat out saying he's stunned without any room for interpretation, and then the movie seemingly pointing to visually it not being a knockout more than anything. So overall, while as I said before, it doesn't really change any line of scaling, I still don't think it's a knockout. I still don't think Godzilla was stunned. Well, I would say this is still an extremely impressive performance for Kong. The only Titans who can have a better performance against Evil being obviously Ghidorah and Shimo, and Evo T-Mat, Muto Prime, potentially Mothra, depending on how you look at her scaling. He more than likely did not knock out Godzilla. With everything said and done. But thank you for coming to this video. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. And please join my Discord server in the description below to get more content from me. Peace.